And when I felt there was no way I could talk myself out of it, I turned to Tim. I said, Tim, something's not right. And that's the last thing I said before my eyes rolled back in my head, my body went limp, and my heart stopped cold.
So hello, Bill Dolan. Welcome to the show. I am truly honored by you joining me today. How are you feeling today?
You know, I'm feeling great. I'm excited to meet you, Brad, for the first time, and excited to do the program with you.
Well, you know, I specifically asked the question feeling and not otherwise because it should come from the heart, you know, not the brain so much. And I think we're going to dig into a lot of information today that's really interesting. I'm familiar with your story, so I've seen it and heard it and read it and appreciated it for sure. So today, you know, I'd like to welcome our listeners to this electrifying episode where today's guest, Bill here, right, literally had a heart-stopping experience. Okay, now today, so I'm honored, by the way, Bill, for you being here. And I know you're an Emmy-nominated TV director, author, speaker, and yet where we're going today is this event that happened in 1999, right? Bill had a profound NDE that not only changed the trajectory of his life, but gave him a direct transformative encounter with what he describes as the embodiment of pure love. Is that right, Bill?
That's exactly right.
And who doesn't want to hear about that, right? So, and all the details, man, don't hold back. So since that moment, he's been on a mission to help others understand the power of divine love and grace and the purpose behind every breath, as well as every beat of your heart, okay? So I think you know what I mean by that. So, hey, Bill, let's start at the beginning. You know, tell us or take us back to the day where the story began.
Well, it actually starts, I mean, we talk about the day I died as if it's the day it began. It's January 28th, 1999. But it obviously started before that. It started when I married my high school sweetheart, and we started to raise a family and tried to figure out how to make ends meet. And I was very blessed to land in a field for which I was passionate and excited, and that was television. You know, a lot of people say everybody wants to be a director, but not everybody gets to be one, and I got to be one. I got to be a live television director, and I worked with the ABC network and then did individual projects with in partnership with Disney and major corporations and world leaders. And, you know, I was just crazy blessed to do what I did. But the trouble with success in the television, the entertainment space, is usually you pay a price. And one of the prices that's paid is the relationship you have with your family. I had become successful on the outside and had done a lot of incredible things and experienced a lot of incredible experiences. But I had become somewhat of an absentee father and husband because Dad was on the road all the time. In fact, my wife tells me a story. We have twins. My wife tells a story of how she was driving by the airport and the kids pointed out, oh, that's where Dad works. And it was kind of a wake-up call. Now, granted, I'd love to tell you that I'm so brilliantly emotionally intelligent that I got it and went, I got to change my life and I need to be a better husband. You know, but the truth is when I left broadcast television, I was kind of running on fear. And part of that fear was hearing the echoes of my father's voice when I was a kid, very abusive at the time, but that sense of you're never going to amount to anything. And that he valued what we did based upon a regular income, a job, a title, all those different things. So in all reality, I was successful on the outside, but I was operating on fear. I was operating on fear of the echoes of my father's voice, operating on fear of what I might lose, operating on fear of not being able to provide for my family. But the price was I was gone a lot. Then an opportunity came up. A friend of mine had been producing documentaries, and he said, I really would love your help on this. In fact, would you partner with me on this to produce this documentary project? And I thought, you know what? It's a change of pace from a lot of the corporate and the entertainment work I was doing. And the thing about documentary work is you can dive into it and you can go deep. But at the end of it, you go into the promotion phase and the revenue starts coming in. So instead of me always being gone all the time, technically, there's a term called mailbox money. And it's that money that comes through the revenue that's produced from, the residuals or whatever distribution model you have. This was going to change my life. I mean, literally change my life. So we did the documentary project. And other side note, for anybody watching this that says, hey, I want to get into entertainment. I want to produce television shows. I want to do these things. A lot of us get all excited about producing the product. But the truth is, you really don't have a product unless you have distribution. That's one of the reasons that sometimes someone might spend $1 million or $10 million or $100 million on a program, but also have to spend another $50 to $100 million on promotion and marketing to get the distribution and the attention of the audience. That's really how the model works. So I understood that if I did this project, I wouldn't just, throw a party because I finished a documentary. I would throw a party if I got distribution. That's the key. And we got it. We got a call from an agency in Nashville that was really excited about distributing our product. Not only that, after some negotiation, they said, fly to Nashville and we've got a big check waiting for you. I thought, this is it. This was the turning point in my career where I could hop on a plane, sign the contract, get this check, and start a new season of life. And maybe be a better dad. Maybe be a better husband. Maybe not be on a plane all the time and sleeping in hotels around the country or around the world. So January 28th was the day we flew to Nashville. And it wasn't just me. I was flying with my best friend, Timothy Greenidge. And Timothy, I've done tons of shows with him. He is one of the best, most brilliant gospel artists, but also audio engineer. So he's worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment. And so when we're going to Nashville, of course, he had projects and he came with me. Now, also picture this. I am, and you can't tell here by looking at this picture, but if you met me, you'd go, oh, you're Irish, you must be descended from leprechauns. In other words, I'm not a really tall guy, okay? Tim, on the other hand, looks like an NFL linebacker. He's a giant guy, strong and broad and all that. So when we fly together, we kind of look like the odd couple. Two best friends who fly together everywhere. I take the window seat. He takes the, so we've kind of had this routine of how we fly together. So we got on that plane that morning. And keep in mind, too, that I live on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. So when you leave our airport and head east, you look out over Mount Hood, which is part of the Cascade Range, and this beautiful snow-capped mountain. And I remember looking out through the window and looking out over the landscape and just taking this giant breath of gratefulness and thankfulness of not only where I live, but the absolute beauty that surrounds me. Creation is just stunning around here. And I looked out with this overwhelming sense, today, my life is going to change forever. But about 20 minutes into the flight, and the reason I know about 20 minutes is because we ended up heading east. We kind of make this arc over on our way there because we do a connection. I started to feel sick. And it was a strange sick. It was as if I was kind of dizzy and things were out of focus and it almost like things were like tingles were coming in and drifting in and out. And it was crazy because look, I fly all the time, so I don't get airsick. And I don't get sick in general. Now, granted, have I been notorious for staying up really late the night before and working, getting all that last minute stuff? Am I notorious for showing up without eating anything or drinking anything? Yes. But sick? No, not me. I was impervious to sickness. I was about to sign the deal of a lifetime. But I was feeling really bad. And I remember specifically looking at the air sickness bag, which I've never paid much attention to. But now I'm looking at it. And I specifically remember thinking in my head, no, not the bag, not the bag, not the bag. And when I felt there was no way I could talk myself out of it, I turned to Tim. I said, Tim, something's not right. And that's the last thing I said before my eyes rolled back in my head, my body went limp, and my heart stopped cold. Of course, Tim, knowing me, thought I was joking. And I still chuckle about the prospect of which joke is that? The dead guy in a plane joke. Oh, yeah, that's a popular one. Pull that one on your best buddy. But it only took him a second to realize that something was desperately wrong. And oddly enough, and I'm not sure if I've ever shared this before, Tim and I were talking about this the other day, and he was telling a friend over dinner about what had happened. And he said the reason he knew something was wrong was 2 weeks before this episode on the plane, he witnessed someone having a heart attack. So he saw what they looked like. He saw the color of their skin, what their body did, everything like that. And so when he saw this, and then he looked at me, he said, that's when I woke up. Something's wrong. So he unfortunately did not know CPR, but he did know about chest compression. So he starts reaching over and he's pounding me on the chest. And he's pounding. Apparently nothing's happening. It's just like hitting a log. So he picks me up and puts me in the aisle. And he's pounding on my chest and pounding on my chest. Needless to say, making a scene. And again, as Tim described it to me, he said that he, in his head, was thinking, I'm going to have to break his ribs. So as he pulls back his fist, ready to give me the punch of a lifetime, I take a breath. And I come back. For those interested in the medical side of the story, it resulted in us making an emergency landing in the beautiful city of Rapid City, South Dakota. And apparently the plane that we fly in is not common, so it made quite a scene in Rapid City. They take me to the hospital. They pick us up, obviously, in an ambulance, and they bolt us down into the ambulance, over to the hospital. And I will say, just so you have a little insight of my crazy sense of humor, I was not completely aware of everything that went on, but there was a brief moment where I thought, one thing I can check off my bucket list is chartering a 737, because this plane was mine. It was going down for me. And when we got out of the hospital, they said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just dehydrated. So it took them a while to actually figure out me ending up in another cardiac wing before they realized that I was diagnosed with malignant neurocardiogenic syncope. And malignant means you could die from it. Neuro's brain, cardio's heart, and syncope means out of sync. And they don't know what causes it. But they know to prevent it, they give you a pacemaker. And so shortly after that diagnosis, I got a pacemaker put in my chest. And I now live every day with the knowledge that that pacemaker has to intervene sometimes on average of 6 times a day, where my heart gets to a dangerously low rate and I could have an episode or die again. And this device picks up and paces me. In fact, this was the original one that was put in, right here. When they have to change the batteries, they change out the unit. And when they took this out of my chest, knowing that this was an instrument that saved my life, I asked the doctors, I said, can I keep that? I really want to keep that. And they said, well, yeah, you paid a lot of money for it. You can keep that. And I just remember this silver dollar-sized instrument, and a version of that still sits in my chest. And I recognize every single day what a precious gift not only my next breath is, but every day is. And when I go to bed at night, knowing that this will probably work through the night, and if it did the right thing, I get to wake up. And if it doesn't work, I might close my eyes for the last time. And it's such a powerful way to live. And it's probably one of a handful of things that has changed my life from that entire episode. So, in short, I will say this, to kind of bring this to a wrap. People go, well, wait a minute, you were going to go get a check. I did eventually meet the distributor. I did get the check. Our documentary went to market. And from that episode, I'd love to tell you that the light switch went on. I got it. I'm a better dad. I'm a better father. You know what? It gave me a new trajectory. And every day, every single day, I'm thankful for the breath of life. And every single day, I realize I have so much more to learn and so much more to apply if I want to be the best version of myself, including being a dad and a husband, and hopefully a producer that can use our gifts of media to make a difference in the world.
That's a fantastic story, but it brings up one question to me. What was it that happened in the time between your eyes rolling in your head and just before he cracked your chest open when you woke up? There must have been some experience that was very profound then.
Well, that is definitely the understatement of the universe. It was mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. You know, I mentioned that as a little kid, I had an experience with my father that was difficult. In fact, to give you a little bit more context, my father was very ill. He was supposed to die. He was given a diagnosis where he was supposed to die in 3 to 6 months. He had a very rare blood disease, and he ended up hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. And as an only child, I ate more gift casseroles from grieving family members going, here, this is for little Billy, and you need a meal and all. People don't know how to talk about death. People struggle with the awkward nature of grieving and passing and the pain that people go through, even trying to process life and death. But the aspect that made it the toughest was that I had to witness my father go through excruciating pain. And when we're in excruciating pain, we usually take it out on the people that are closest to us. And so for me as a little boy, that person that was closest to the pain of my father was me. So he took it out on me. He was physically abusive. He was verbally abusive. And I would actually hide in my room, which part of the reason I'm in the media business today. I became a student of storytelling in old classic motion pictures because that was my escape. And I learned storytelling and characters and casting and all those different things by hiding from the horror that was waiting for me in the presence of my dad. Now, flash forward to that day that I closed my eyes and I crossed the threshold of eternity. I can tell you that leading up to that, the last person I wanted to meet was God. Last person. Now, granted, I grew up in somewhat of a religious household. And it's funny, whether you are part of a religious household or not or something like that, there's certain things we say, like, oh, God is love, and God loves you, and you can trust God. And if people were just ask you out of the blue, do you trust God? We'll go, oh, yes, of course I trust God. Do you love God? Oh, yeah, I love God. There's a bunch of lip service, cultural lip service that I think a lot of us pay to a very obscure concept. For me, I was convinced that if I ever saw God, he was going to put his finger in my face and say, you failed me. You disappoint me. You did not live up to your potential. I now realize that a lot of times we take the darkest things that have ever been said to us by people that we presume to love us or people that we respect or their authorities, and we superimpose those on God. And that was the God I was sure I would ever meet. But that's not the God I met. Instead, when I crossed the threshold from the dimension of time and space to the time of eternity, I came face to face with God. And I was overwhelmed in a few ways. I mean, one, I clearly recognized that I had crossed into a space where everything that ever has happened and everything that ever will happen has happened. Which, curiously, imagine what's happening on that plane with my body and Tim and the 2-3 minutes that he is trying to bring life back into this shell. And I am now in the dimension of eternity where I could have spent 2 to 3 million years. There's no clock there because it's all happened there. But the thing that blew me away the most was being consumed by God. And it wasn't like a God with a beard and whatever walking across a gold thing. And I can't even tell you, because a lot of people say, were you in heaven? I don't know. There were no road signs, like welcome to heaven, or the jokes where you have, St. Peter at the door with a check-in sheet and, and a gate. There's nothing like that. I could not tell you that I was in heaven definitively, but I can tell you who I was with. And the thing about coming in the presence of God was that I realized I wasn't just meeting someone that loved. I was meeting the total embodiment of love, the author of love, the source of love, the radiant force of love. And figuratively, because I can't remember going, oh, and I lifted my chin and looked up, but I remember the sense of trying to look up to find the borders or the end. Where did the love end? And it's like as high was the extent of God and love, and as low, and as wide as to the right, the left, deep. It wasn't just I was with God, I was actually being consumed by God in that experience. And it wasn't if he had to say anything, but it was this recognition, and I sense this for everybody, that the creator of the universe doesn't just know us, doesn't just like us, doesn't even just love us, but that the creator of the universe is madly, deeply in love with you and has hoped every hope, has shed every tear with you, has dreamed every dream with you, has been with you every second of your existence, and has been cheering for you. Is your biggest cheerleader. Your biggest cheerleader is the creator of the universe. So clearly it was a contrast from any type of thing, a religious layer that I had tried to put on it, cultural layer I tried to put on it, parental layer of you're not good enough, completely stripped away. And I did not realize what a burden we live with, trying to define God within the frameworks of some of the relationships we have, and some of the guilt we have, and some of the self-condemnation we have. That's not God. It changed me.
That is the deep part of the story, the NDE. And it's funny when you get into this, there's this crazy word that most people had not heard, which was malignant neurocardiogenic syncope. Now, when you break that down, you got that neuro and cardio and syncope. So the mind and the heart are out of sync physically, right? But you know what? You think about that and you think when the mind and the heart are out of sync spiritually, you're probably in about as much trouble. Your heart tells you one thing, your mind tells you something totally different. You have a pacemaker that helps you physically. What do you have that helps you spiritually?
Boy, that's a great question. I think part of it, one, is the recognition that, yeah, we do have a mind. In fact, a lot in my media work, not to get too strategic here, but my media work, we tell stories. We help build brands and we help create experiences, but we recognize that especially like we're doing conferences, there's the front left cortex is where language is. And a lot of times when we refer to the brain, we're really talking to this piece right here, that piece that has language and logic and justification and puts together all these different processes and things like that, and then is able to articulate them. And that's a part of the brain that basically is a definition piece of it. But we also know that there's a limbic system. And this limbic system, which is still a miracle and mystery altogether, where people feel, and they feel deeply. And we also do know that the brain does have, the heart has brain cells in it. Brain-like cells, thinking cells that connect and talk. And I truly do now believe with all my heart that we're not just chemical and biology and flesh, that we really do have a soul that lives on long past the shell of our body. And so recognizing that exists and recognizing what's happening when I think, when I feel with my heart, and when I feel and hear with my soul, is almost like learning a new language. You know, when you're a baby, you hear words and tones and things like that. Over time, they start to get definition because they go from just sounds to meaning. And I think part of it has to do with being immersed in that, but also in leaning into it. A silly phenomenon among a lot of immigrants who come to this country who don't speak English actually learn by watching television. I was just talking to a friend who came over here from Russia, a family from Ukraine. They're just telling me, he goes, how did you learn? He goes, I would watch cartoons. He goes, I was a little kid. And there's something about immersing yourself and then leaning into it, being deliberate, that language goes from obscurity to meaning. And that's a long way of describing how I think we can learn to hear our thoughts, to understand our feelings, and to hear the spiritual voice, I believe, of God. It's by being present. It's by leaning in. And it's not to say that I've become an expert at it. I'm not. I'm just another guy on a journey. But I'm a guy that's now been abundantly aware that this exists, and I want to listen, and I want to understand, because I understand that there's something far more powerful on the other side than we are cognizant of in this dimension of time.
Yes, I agree. And, it's interesting where you focus your time and attention, that's actually something that you'll have new insights come to you because that's where, your focus is. Of course, it's interesting during this experience when you went to the other side and came back, and it's called near-death experience, but at some point everyone has a death experience, right? But it kind of makes you feel like the word death should have a different meaning, or maybe we replace the word with something else because death isn't sort of a finite, sort of like turning a computer off and the screen goes black. It's a transition into a higher place potentially. Now, I would ask, when you were on the other side, did you feel like that was home over there? And by the way, if that was like where we originate and we are these eternal spiritual beings, we come over temporarily to physically manifest in this experience. And then we go back, where is home? Because when you're here and you don't really know much about that and you haven't had an NDE, you think this is home. But based on your experience, where's home?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't have a profound spiritual answer for that because when I was in the presence of God, in the dimension of eternity, I felt very much at home. I mean, for goodness sakes, how could you not feel at home when you are literally consumed by the love of God and by whom I believe is our creator? So that everything about that, it screams ideas and thoughts of home. But, and I say this, I'm at home right now. I'm at home with you because I'm still here. And I realize that person that had a profound spiritual experience is still having it. Now I'm having it in my body. Now I'm having it in a dimension of time. But now I realize that the dimension of eternity can pierce the dimension of time. And we can live that every single day. Every single day. It's not a place that I go. It's not a thing that I do. It is literally an act of being in that space. And so for that reason, I'm home. Now I'll also add this. When I used to travel all the time, and I still, of course, I still travel quite a bit, but I traveled a lot. There was an instance where my family went on a vacation to another part of the state, and I had to slip away for a business trip. So I slipped away for a business trip, and on my way back, I stopped at our house where we lived. And if anybody asked me where I was going, I'd say, "Oh, I'm gonna go home for a few hours and pick up some stuff," until I got to this building where we sleep and we eat and I raise my kids. And it dawned on me, this isn't home. This physical thing that I have attached to home because I sleep here and I eat here and I reside here and I pay taxes here does not make it home. It's when I got on that plane and took the extra leg and rejoined my family that I felt at home. And it was, for me, the recognition that we're at home in a place when we're around the people we love and love us. It's not a geographical thing. It truly is a spiritual and relational thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hadn't really thought of it that way. So home isn't really an address. It's where home is where the heart is sort of the expression. And of course, I think, something I've seen you say before as well is that it's all about relations. Of course, we're going to talk about your book here in a little bit as well, The 7 Disciplines of Relationship Marketing, but it's all about relationships. And I liked how you said the sun travels through space and it just goes endlessly. And in space, it's freezing cold up there until the sun arrives on the surface of, say, the plane that we live on, Earth. And then there's a relationship between the sun and sort of the Earth and ourselves. And then there's warmth, right? And so I thought, that was so amazing. I love that. So that ties right into your answer here. It's not an address. It's where the heart is. And by the way, that's a perfect transition into this next segment that I have, which is called Heart's First Whisper. I got 9 questions that I spring on you, and these are impulsive. It's your heart pouring the response out. And these are kind of quick ones that we move right through, and to really get to know you a little better. What do you think about that?
I'm ready. I'm excited for this, Brad.
Oh, cool. All right, good. Well, let's get it kicked
As long
off.
as they're not math questions. That is just
Well, no, there's 9 of them. 9 is the only math. I think 9's kind of a fun, lucky number, and that's the extent of the math. Okay?
okay.
Excellent. So how did your NDE reshape your perception of love, especially in your relationships with your wife, children, and your career, given the challenging relationship you mentioned with your dad when you were young?
Well, it really did reshape my whole perception of love, because, and I thank you for the gateway introduction to how I wrote about this in my book. I grew up listening to the Beatles and listening to, seeing, throw pillows that say love, T-shirts that say love, bumper stickers that say love. We say love all over the place, and it sounds great. But love outside of relationship is just a word. Can be a noun, but most of the time when it's most powerful is when it's a verb. And the only place that love can truly be a verb and be expressed is in relationship. So to kind of reiterate what you said, I use the example of the sun because here we have the most powerful radiant source in the universe. It's the equivalent to, I don't know how many nuclear bombs simultaneously going off. But yeah, if you go out in the middle of space, you think, well, I'm going to get closer to this radiant source. It's freezing out there. But But when you get to Earth, and now the sun's energy has a place where it has a relationship with something or someone, that energy now is felt. It comes to life. It brings warmth. It just completely transforms from a concept, an energy concept and a source, to a relationship that brings value and power. And that idea, and it's hard because, let me be blunt, relationships are hard. They take work. They take time. We're not surrounded by perfect people, and God forbid I look in the mirror and I don't see one there either. But in those relationships is where we have the opportunity to express love, to live love. And that love, by the way, we use the word love, but love actually manifests itself in all these other forms. For example, we talk about kindness. Everybody should be kind. Well, at its heart, you can act kind, or you can be kind because you love. You can act gentle, but you can be gentle because you love. You can act empathetic, but you can be empathetic because you love. This is where love has so much power, because it is truly the expression of the most important values we want to carry and live out in life. And specifically asked about wife and children, I'll tell you, my kids are older now. And we've had a chance to talk more. And I remember my middle son tearing my heart out when he said, "Dad," he goes, "I knew that you loved me, and I know you love me." He said, "But the thing that I wanted the most from you that I knew I never got when I was a little boy was your presence. Even when you were in a room, you'd show up for all the right games. You'd show up for all the right activities. You'd be at the right parties. But I knew you were thinking about something else. I knew that your head was somewhere else." And out of this, the NDE, and certainly what I experienced with God, if God can consume me with love, I'm not God. But how can I make sure that my children and my wife and the people in my life feel some sense of not necessarily being consumed, but deliberately being loved by me? And the way you can deliberately love somebody is to be present for them, to hear their heart. Sometimes just shut up and truly be present. And that's changed me. I'm far from perfect, but I'm now conscious of it, and I'm working on it. I'm working on being better at that every day.
Well, it's amazing, Bill. It's like anybody listening to that last response of yours will relate to it for sure. You do the best you can. You learn from that. You just can't go back and do it again necessarily, but you can give back. And it does definitely sound like you're doing that for sure, but that's going to be a tearjerker response for sure. I want to shift gears back to the airplane. When you were having that NDE experience, boom, you popped into that experience. But on the way back, I've heard you say you came back through a tunnel, and that tunnel was just a tornado of these life review scenes that you were seeing. Was there any particular one that really stands out that would make a lot of sense to share now?
There wasn't a particular scene. I was so consumed by the experience and also frustrated by it. Some people describe it as a spiritual experience. Some people describe it as a hard restart of the mind, trying to come back and collect all these things. Because it was as if coming back was, if imagine every scene of your life now cut up into puzzle pieces, and thrown into a massive fan, and you're right at the heart of like that fan, that tornado, just blowing at you. And the scene goes so fast that you have an instant sense of recognition, but not real identification. It was me. It was my life. It was everything I'd experienced up to that point. But I couldn't grasp a single one. It was just a consuming experience. And then, of course, when I did come back, and it went bang, 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 and it got faster and faster and faster and faster. And then it was like, bang, I was back in the plane.
You know what's interesting is when you're on the other side, experiencing things that fast, you actually may be able to comprehend every single thing that's delivered to you at that rate because your bandwidth is higher. And then you pop back in the body, and you just can't contain all that in this little body that we have. But it's possible that over time, some of that might come back to you, and you may feel some of that. Something might awaken each one of those thoughts over time. Possibly when your son said that to you, he wanted you to look him in the eye, and he wanted to be the only one in the room, essentially, right? It's possible you had one of those experiences in that tornado, and then you lived it out with your son afterwards. You never know. But, this also would bring you to a place for, figuring out your life purpose. So how did you understand your life's purpose evolve after realizing every breath and every heartbeat is a divine gift?
Well, that was another incredible process. I think there's a lot of people, I've heard stories of people who have had near-death experiences that actually struggle with guilt, that feel like, why'd I get to come back? Why am I alive? Especially if they were in a situation where others died, but they got to come back. And you do a lot of why me? Why me? And it can be condemning, or it can be enlightening. Why me? Why me? And in my book, I ended up going through a process. I asked a lot of questions. Now, granted, when I went to college, I didn't love reading fiction stories. So in all my humanities credits, I would study the philosophers. So I love Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and even going to grade school. It was a Jesuit grade schools, and they're all about education, all about stuff. So I went into the philosophical inside me, what's going on? And I came up with this concept that isn't unique to me, but it was something that I really discovered. And I called it the authentic purpose compass. And I began doing a reflection about what defines me. And I started thinking about my passions and what are the things that just stir me. And even as I talk to people about this, because I'll walk through this process when I'm helping companies with their brands and their stories, I'll even ask them, what makes you cry? What stirs your soul so much that it makes you cry? What would stir your soul so much that if you couldn't do it, it would make you cry? And start processing that a little bit. And then take a little shift and say, what are your gifts? What are your aptitudes? I mean, when you were growing up, I remember there were kids they were the art kids. One kid, Chris, you give him a pencil and he could do something that looks like an illustration out of National Geographic. I remember Tom, he was an athlete, doesn't anything he couldn't do, he's just an athlete. And I remember other kids, especially Yvonne and Mary, they were just seemed to know geography and math, and so I had to look at myself and say, wait, if someone defined me, what kid am I? And I realized that part of my gift had to do with the arts and language. So, okay, that's interesting. And then I took one more filter and looked at it, and looked at my life experience. Because I truly believe that everything you've done up to this moment, everything you've done, is like laying a brick of foundation for who you are becoming and the impact you will make on this world. And when I started looking at those things, then obviously the centerpiece is this crazy experience. You know, I'm one of those weird people that can say, I died. I'm one of those strange people that can say, I came face to face with God in the dimension of eternity. I had a profound experience that changed my life, and I realized that not everybody gets to go there and come back and talk about it. And of all the skill sets and experiences I've had in my life, what would be the lasting impact I pray I would have in this world? And I realized, like some people call it the tombstone question. What would they put on your tombstone? And I realized that I am here to be ambassador of the love of God. I'm here as an ambassador to tell you that you have a profound divine purpose, and the creator of the universe is madly in love with you. That's my thing. And I realize it's hard stuff. It's big stuff. Sometimes people think it's crazy stuff. But it was the stuff that's landed in my lap, and the stuff that I realize I have a unique voice, and now a calling to share it.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of, well, not really a lot. There's a fraction of the people in the world that know love and its importance and so forth. But the problem is it seems to get bumped down the priority queue,
Oh, yeah.
until you have an experience like you just did and you realize, well, wait a minute, it's actually the most important thing. Now, we have to live and function in this world, as you've often said, pay the bills, and host the family in the house and so forth. But the highest order bit could and it feels like it should be love. And yet, that brings us to our next question, which is like your definition of success now. Now, before the NDE, you had a definition of success. And after the NDE, you probably have a new one that might include and maybe prioritize love a little higher, even in the word success. What are your thoughts there?
I'm hoping that success doesn't have to be that complex. I mean, I use an example, actually not in my book, but I use it a lot when I'm talking to other people, that if we were a sports team, there's ways we measure success. It's usually touchdowns and wins. There's other sub things like that. If you're a business person, usually the bottom line, the, retention of clients and things like that. In other words, metrics apply to whatever game you feel you're playing. And so for me, and it's my game. It doesn't have to be your game. It's not imposing anything on anybody. But when you say, why am I here? And what do I feel I'm uniquely positioned to do? Doing that and living that is success. Walking on that journey, and again, it's fully accepting we're flawed human beings. In fact, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, I've got Iron Man behind me. And it reminds me there was a season was I was on the board of the Stan Lee Foundation. Stan, who's the architect of the Iron Man stories and the Marvel stories. And Stan had this great saying that I absolutely love, and it drove all his character development. It's this: inside every flawed human being is a superhero waiting to emerge. And I hold on to that as being a little insight to what success can be. Because a lot of us are playing games we were never intended to play. A lot of us are keeping scores that other people have told us are important that really aren't. But there's going to be a moment in everybody's life when no matter how flawed you are, the superhero needs to emerge. And I believe that that will be a defining moment for a lot of us, not only to let us know what game we're playing, what's really important, but defining our own definition of what real success is.
Well, that leads perfectly into the next question. This superhero being focused and knowing what's important and what's not. If you, as a superhero, had to write a personal mission manifesto today, what would it say?
Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love the people around you and those that have been a part of your life, and even on the periphery of your life. Love them with all your heart. Find those ways to uniquely meet them, serve them, honor them, and help them grow and realize the greatest fulfillment in their lives. And look in the mirror and love this person that God has given to you, yourself. Don't focus on your flaws. Recognize they exist, but recognize you're in the process of becoming. And every day, do what you can to become the best version of yourself so that you can love more than you've ever loved in your life.
You know, I'm glad we recorded that because we definitely need to write that down and keep that handy. I think that was surgical, every word you chose. And you know what's interesting is if you had that up on the wall and your intention every day was to follow that, then the question would be, you know, how do you listen differently now to these heart's whispers, to these intuitive nudges in everyday life, so that you know you're following that directive that you have on the wall to love? You know, how do folks really tune into their intuition and trust it?
Well, it goes back to that language thing. You lean into it. You're deliberate about it. Wisdom doesn't just plop in your lap. Gold doesn't just sit in nuggets on every road you walk. You have to dig for it. You have to search for it. Some of the most precious things in the world are hidden, but I believe they're hidden within arm's reach. And when we are deliberate about recognizing that there is a powerful opportunity for us to make a profound impact in the world, you lean into it. There's almost a sense of, and it's partly because of the death and the pacemaker and recognizing that when I wake up in the morning, wow, I got another day. There's a certain sense of excitement and anticipation to know that today, this next chapter is going to be filled with adventure, hardship, thrills, chills. I mean, it's going to be everything that you'd see in a motion picture that someone would try to sell you to go see. And you realize that the greatest, craziest, most fascinating motion picture is sitting right in front of you, and it's the story of your own life. So leaning into that, listening to it, is something that brings me a great sense of joy and anticipation. And that's how I listen differently.
Yeah, because listening is key, and some listen more than others, but some have more abilities to connect than others. And so, listening, do you have any newfound abilities since the NDE? Of course, other than learning to play the piano. Uh-huh.
Yeah, remember that old joke, doctor, I broke my arm. Well, I can't say that I have newfound abilities, but I will say I have newfound awareness that has caused me to be deliberate about growing in those areas. Things we've discussed. I think I've grown in my ability to be present. I think I've grown in my ability to listen better. I think I've grown in my ability to define what's really important and see the world through a very purposeful filter. I think all those things, those skills have all been sharpened through this process. But I wouldn't say, I can fly. or I can now play the piano better. I wish I could play the piano better, but it didn't happen miraculously.
Well, it does sound like the skills you have now are an intention and a focus in areas that mean a lot to yourself and the relationships, as you put, with everyone around you. And, I would finish this up with a 1-2 punch. These last two questions here are really interesting here. How did encountering God transform your understanding of forgiveness? What do you think about that word, forgiveness?
Well, it's a powerful word, and it's philosophical, it's theological, and I'd love to tell you that I have absolute clarity on it. I don't. I think the idea of forgiveness, one has to first ask the question, do I even have the power to forgive? Or is that a God thing? I can't say I can answer that definitively, but it does give me caution before I get really cavalier with throwing out forgiveness or I forgive you. However, tied to forgiveness, I think, is another word called grace. And I think that has definitely changed me and has given me a new understanding of how love is expressed. Because forgiven basically means you've done something to offend me or hurt me, or you've done something that I think is you've violated some law, and so I can therefore forgive you. Again, I'm not sure that works exactly that way, but I can always say I can give grace. I can recognize that we do live in a flawed world, that people are flawed, and that people are not perfect. And when people perform imperfect acts, like all the time, I don't condemn them for it, as I don't believe God condemns us for that. Instead, I recognize, hey, you're on a journey, you're growing, you're learning. I do believe and I hope that people are living with the best intentions, knowing that not everybody does, but I still try really hard to give grace. And that's what I believe I can give.
I like that. The grace word, yeah, that doesn't really come up a lot when I bring these types of questions. So I like that introduced right there. The other thing that you've said is plan A and plan B. Don't always have expectations for plan A, because if it doesn't happen, what happens when your expectations aren't met? Frustration, of course. Plan B, and B stands for blessed. And I think this falls into this category as well. I've kind of thought about the word forgiveness. It kind of feels like on an NDE, when you're on the other side, you hear of this non-judgmental, pure love world, right? And so that kind of tucks into forgive. If I don't judge someone, then I don't have to forgive them. And so the forgiveness isn't even actually required. It's just blessing them regardless, because you didn't judge them in the first place. And so somehow you can kind of get away from the word forgiveness as well. And when you do get to the other side, if it's true that it's this unbelievable blanket of love, and that comes in many ways, in many forms, because there's no judgment at all, it really ties back into this. I like the word blessed for that, and then I love the word grace for that as well. Thank you. Now, wrapping things up, here's a good one. How has experiencing divine love shifted your view on suffering and tragedy in the world?
Well, probably the biggest thing is my perception of God. Because we try to put human skin on God. Now, granted, depending upon your faith, and as I grew up, Jesus was the physical embodiment, the expression of God. In how I grew up, and most people describe Jesus as he's written pretty darn perfect, So then let's say, well, let's look at other people. How are they? Not so perfect. Not so perfect at all. But it's interesting, even though we have this expression of Jesus that is the expression of God to millions, billions of people in this world, what we do is we put other human characteristics on God. Like, take the worst aspects of humanity. Let's put that on God. Take the really judgy things, and we're going to put that on God. The really mean things, we're going to put that on God. And was there a flood the other day? Well, it's God's fault. Was there an economic downturn? Well, it's God's fault. And I came to the realization that this is my belief. God gives us choices. One of the greatest gifts he gives us because he loves us is free will. And free will to make choices. And because even if I had an entire world made up of Bills and Brads, it'd probably be screwed up because we're not perfect at all. And the fact that God allows us to make mistakes, and God allows us to grow, and God allows us to stretch, and God has given us a lot of provision for coming back, for getting back up, and from learning from that. And the fact that God says, I'm here for you. You can call on me. No matter what. No matter how goofy you are. I think about how flawed I am. Mistakes I've made. Areas I've come up short. And God still loves me.
Thank you for that. That's that Heart's First Whisper section there. I think we got through that in an amazing way. Every time I do that, I learn more and more, all kinds of new little things. So that was amazing. I would ask you kind of a loose end question here. What number pacemaker are you on now? I know they replace that every once in a while.
I'm on my third.
Third?
I'm on my third now. Yeah.
Is that, how long do they last?
Well, it's a combination. It depends on how much you use them. I have a friend just talked to me earlier this week. Right now, his is averaging 5 years, and because it has to intervene a lot. In my case, I'm at a point where I'm intervening at a lower rate than I used to, and so they're lasting 8 to 12 years. And of course, with the pacemakers, there's new software updates. They can do software updates the way you do with an iPhone or a computer, where they literally I do it through my phone. It's updating things, but it can't update the physical elements. And there's certain software updates and hardware updates that they go, you know what? It's a good thing your battery's getting low because we're going to give you the newest unit. And part of it has to do also with security, too. It's not just is it working well, but the idea of creating a device that is radio controlled and can't be hacked.
You know, you want to get telemetry off it, but you don't want someone going in there and jimmying the thing up. Hey, you know, also induction charging. You know, you'd be able to charge it externally through the skin, and that might give you extension to its life also. But I guess 5 to 10 years, 10 years is probably plenty.
It's good. And the procedure to change it is not significantly evasive. I mean, they literally cut it open it up again, and the cords that are currently going into my heart have all stayed intact or are great, so they don't have to change the cord, so they don't have to actually touch my heart. They do it right here. So it's a very simple procedure, but that induction thing, that would be fascinating.
You know, I love how you, and this is obvious if you have this, but not to those that don't. You say, you know, every time your heart beats, you see it as a gift. So, you know, you wake up in the morning. Oftentimes in the spiritual world, they say, listen, when you wake up in the morning, you should see life as another gift and be grateful and so on. But in your world, you literally are, that your technology is keeping your mind and heart in sync so that your blood can pump so that you can live another day. Wow. The appreciation there must be amazing.
It's crazy. You're right. We say all these things and quote all these Hallmark cards about, you know, today's a gift. And, you know, I'll tell you, there's nothing like getting up in the morning and looking at your app and saying, guess what? You got dangerously close, but we took care of it. You know, the truth is, life is so fragile. Life is so fragile. And my prayer is that if anybody takes things from this story, you know, certainly I want people to recognize the immeasurable love of God, the immeasurable power that you have and the purpose that you have and the gift that you have of life. But that is expressed because you start to have an appreciation, a reverence, an excitement for the next breath you take. Because you didn't earn it. I mean, look, I didn't write a check for it. I didn't slip my credit card in for it, go, hey, let's get some more breaths. I've done nothing like that. Nothing like that. But yet it's given to us every day as this incredible gift. And it's a gift we're not sure how long we're going to have. So appreciate it, love it, celebrate it, live it. And I will tell you, not only will you get up every morning, hopefully, with a sense of anticipation, a sense of excitement, a sense of reverence, but it will make your life so much richer because you will taste things you've never tasted. You'll see things you've never seen. You'll feel things you've never felt. And I truly believe that you'll impact more lives than you ever thought possible.
Beautiful closing message. Thank you, man. Bill, and the whole story is so amazing and heartfelt. Thank you for sharing. You know, it's amazing that you know, the healing associated with this. For those that are stuck in life, and maybe some of those that are actually just starting their spiritual journey, or they don't have a knowing like you, but they're trying to experience as many folks as had these experiences, so they can feel this themselves. So that's what today's really all about. So for those watching, you know, I really hope you feel the invitation in Bill's words to live more love and more trust and more grace, not someday, but now. And I tell you, for those who really resonated with Bill's message, you know, you can really connect with him, certainly at 7drm.com. Is there any other direction you'd have for folks trying to reach out?
That's probably, I mean, the nature of this story. Go to 7drm.com. That's also where you can get my book, you can do a workshop. I mean, I offer a lot that delves into the story, and the way you apply it It's really about application. I also have a creative agency. So the idea of our brand work and everything's through our agency, Spirit Media. That's spiritmedia.com. And of course, if you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do a lot of other social media, but certainly can DM me there or email me, bill@spiritmedia.com. I try to make myself available. So if you want to learn more, if there's ways that I can help, guess what? I was given another breath today. So that means I get to be here for you.
Beautiful. And hopefully another breath tomorrow and a lot of tomorrows. Well, thank you for joining us at this profound journey. Thank you, Bill. And if you found the conversation enlightening, be sure to like and subscribe and share. And as always, keep questioning, keep exploring, and go beyond the illusion to discover your true self. So take care, everyone, and bye for now.
I hope I was a blessing for you, Brad. It was great, just great. Because of you have a long form show, I felt I could take liberties to kind of elaborate and process. Those are fun questions. Great questions. I appreciate the investment you made into researching the story. I really do respect that. A lot of people don't do that. It's like, wow, you really did do a lot of homework. And I really respect that. I appreciate that, Brad.